this video we're looking at the Direchasm cards for the Dread Pageant Warband. Hello AOS fans, Robin here, and I'm having a little look at the Dread Pageant faction specific cards from the Direchasm box. Let's have a little look. We'll start with the fighters themselves. So, can I get them all in shot? Because I'm zoomed right in. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. I cannot. RC Bickets. Okay, then let's have a little look at the cards. So they're a pretty solid warband. They're interesting that they're 5-4, 2 and 2. So you've got 2 hard-hitting, tough fighters, and then a couple of weaker fighters, only 2. And their Inspire condition is really interesting. I know there's been some speculation about this on the internet already, but after an activation, surviving fighters have 6 or more wound counters. Now, this is going to be interesting to see how easy they are or difficult they are to inspire. You've obviously got Slate Slash and Vassal that can take a bit of damage, but Gladiator and Hadzu, they've only got 2 wounds each, and if if they take 2 damage, then they're dead, and then they don't count towards the Inspire condition. So you take a risk by you make them susceptible. If you take them down to 1 each, you make them susceptible to being picked off by a bit of ping damage, but the other 2 you want to keep tough, so it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But you do, during the 2 of the fighters attempts, Slate Slash and Vasilak can either deal damage to themselves or heal themselves when fighting, so they can heal themselves back up, and it is after the fight during this fight attack action, so they can do it. It can't be interrupted like the wolf attack in Beastgrave. So they should always be able to do it because it's during this fighter's attack action, or there's certainly a lot less interactions which stop it, so that is good for them. I have also noticed that the other 2 don't have that, so they don't have the opportunity to contribute, although of course they wouldn't be able to contribute very much anyway, only having 2 wounds. Gladiator, she is permanently on guard, which is kind of interesting, and Hadzu's Arrows of Desire are quite cool. You don't have to drive back in this with them, you can just actually pull somebody towards you, because you can definitely see he can fire. He's got range 3, you can definitely shoot and pull somebody towards Slate Slash or Vasilak to do some serious damage. They all inspire at the same time in this with this Inspire condition. What are their base attacks like? Well, we've got some lethal flurries, 3 fury and 2 damage. Is pretty accurate attack. There's some nice, a little bit of great strength on there. That becomes something to worry about. Agonizing spear is 2 hammers, 2 damage. Which is also good, and it's a range 2 as well, and Gladiator has a range 2 but it's only 2 fury, but she has a range 2 attack as well, and of course she's always on guard. And then Hadzu is shooting his Arrows of Desire, which is a standard range attack that we've seen in this game of 3 fury and 1 damage. The big guys have shields, so they're susceptible to cleave. Gladiator, as well as being on guard, rolls 2 dodge, so she's going to be hard to take down. And then Hadzu has just got 1 dodge. And what do they inspire to? Well, Hadzu gains an extra range, so he goes up to range 4. He gains +1 defense and +1 move, so they're pretty mobile. I should have said that. They've all moved 4, so they're all pretty mobile. It's a pretty mobile warband. Gladiator, when she inspires, she gets an extra attack, so she gets a Whirling Glaive, which is a scything attack, but it's 3 fury and 1 damage, so it's not brilliant. With great strength on it, it could be nice. Then you've got her Dazzling Glaive goes up by 1 sword to 3 swords, 2 damage, which is nothing to be sniffed at. It's still range 2, and she doesn't gain anything else, but that's not bad. Vasilak the Gifted, when he's inspired, he goes up, so he gains an extra movement. Gladiator gains an extra movement as well, I should have said. Vasilak gains an extra movement, and his spear gains cleave and 1 extra damage. So 2 fury with cleave isn't bad against certain warbands, but you might struggle against some high level dodge warbands. We're looking to try and get some ensnare in there. And then Slate Slash, the man, he goes up to 4 fury, which is immense. You don't get too many 4 fury. Still only 2 damage, but there's extra strength cards are pretty ubiquitous. You could use Urgrub because he's only range 1, and he goes up to 5 movement as well. And interestingly, and I should have said this at the top, you've got 2 hunters, and Slake is a hunter and a quarry, which is kind of interesting, I think. So that's the Warband fighters. They're pretty solid. I think they probably are stronger than the early season Warbands, but they probably compare reasonably well with the Direchasm ones. But yeah, they are the basic stats. There's no wizard. You've got a couple of hunters, I say, and Slake is permanently a quarry, which is kind of interesting. Well, there you go. So that's the fighters. Let's have a look if they've got the cards to back themselves up. I'm going to start with the Gambits. So we've got the Lure of Slaanesh. Choose 1 fighter, push the chosen fighter 1 hex or up to 1 hex for each surviving friendly fighter with 1 or more wound counters. So as you're trying to inspire, distributing your wound counters across your warband, that could be really good. And it's choose 1 fighter, so it's enemy or friend. And you know, I think that could be huge. We've got Cruel Pangs. Choose 1 fighter holding an objective, deal 1 damage to that fighter. So we have seen a card of that before, but it's quite strong. Dark Desires. Choose 1 enemy fighter. The chosen fighter's player must pick 1. Give that fighter 1 move taken, or you push that fighter 1 hex. I kind of like these either-or cards. We did see one in the Nightvar set, I think. Used to get quite a lot of play, and then got less so. But it's an interesting rule space where your opponent, who probably won't want you to push them, or possibly will want to move them. So it's all about the timing of that one. Could mess up a charge, for example. The Dark Desires is pretty interesting, and there's no range on it either. So that's a tasty card. Fueled by Sensation. Choose 1 friendly fighter, pick. You can either heal them or damage them, so again it's really useful. Could help you inspire or could help you recover once you have inspired. Another Sensation card is a Rush of Sensation. Play this fight after a friendly fighter's attack action that takes an enemy fighter out of action. That friendly fighter makes 1 move action. A double move is always powerful, and you know I can see that card getting some play. Vicious Barbs. It's got lots of text. Choose 1 enemy fighter adjacent to 1 more friendly fighter. The chosen fighter is uninspired and cannot be inspired. This effect persists until the end of the round or until that fighter is taken out of action. When this effect ends, the chosen fighter is inspired. So you know, that again could be really useful at the end of round 2, or at the beginning of round 3, or you know when your opponent's setting up, gearing up to do something. A sudden lack of inspiration could really undo their plans. Innovating Perfume. Pete's got this card on permanently. -1 damage from the first attack action made in the next activation. So we've seen cards like that before. Deadly Embrace, another one with a big chunk of text. Play during the enemy fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack action that targets a friendly fighter after the deal damage step. If the friendly fighter has been dealt enough damage to take them out of action, roll 1 magic dice. On a lightning, the friendly fighter makes an attack action that must target the attacker. So you know, basically a parting shot card. We've seen those before. Some people like them, some people don't. I'm not a fan of them. I like to know my plans are going to work. And then we have a Slake/specific ploy, which is after another fighter's move action. If that fighter is not adjacent to a friendly Slake/, push him up to 2 hexes, and you must be no more than 2 hexes from a friendly Vastilac. So it's a little bit complicated, but could be useful for pushing your big guy around the board. And then we move into the upgrades. We've got Sickening Resilience. I could see this being handy on Slake/ maybe, but it is only works on a roll of a shield, but you can only deal 1 damage. You know, it's pretty solid. When the fighter is dealt damage, roll 1 defense dice. On a shield, this fighter is only dealt 1 damage, so it's pretty huge if it works. Swift as Desire. +1 move, or +2 move if the fighter has 1 or more wound counters. A Soporific Musk, again another one of Pete's favourite pongs. Enemy fighters that begin a move action within 2 hexes of this fighter have -1 move. Not sure how much you'll see that played, because moves is so ubiquitous now. People have lots of move. I don't think that would upset too many plans in the current board game state. Distracting Ostentation. -1 dice for attack actions made by enemy fighters adjacent to this fighter. That could be pretty big, although again there's lots of range 2 attacks in the game now, but against certain warbands that could be massive, and obviously against other warbands it could be largely useless. Strength from Pain, +1 damage to this fighter to range attack actions, range 1 or 2 attack actions if they have 1 or more wound counters. So it's another version of Great Strength, but you have the drawback that it only works when you have a wound counter. But of course, Slaanesh Warband will often have wound counters on them. Sadistic Goad, I'm not sure of the use of this card at all. This attack action's damage characteristic is 1 plus the number of target wound counters. Now, not characteristic, its characteristic would be immense, but it's counters, so it's better when they're nearly dead, when you don't actually need it to be as good. So it's 3 swords and it's a 2 damage, a 2 range. I could see maybe you put it on Hadzu, but there's probably better options out there. Mark of the Dark Prince. Now I'm into the fighter specific cards. This is Mark of the Dark Prince. During this fighter's range 1 attack action, before the attack roll, deal 1 damage to this fighter. So it ties into their inspire condition. If you do, choose Cleave or Ensnare, and the attack action has that ability until it's resolved. So could be useful. Helps you towards your inspire condition, and gives you Cleave or Ensnare, which could be really useful in the right circumstances. Then we have Shore Shutterer. After a range 1 or 2 attack action that targets this fighter, roll 1 attack dice on a roll of a hammer, pick one of the attacker's upgrades and the card is discarded. That's a Vassilac specific one. I probably won't ever use that because it's a person specific and a rolling a dice. Dance Without End. There's a reaction after another friendly fighter's move action, push this fighter 1 hex or 2 hexes if you deal 1 damage to this fighter. That's pretty cool. That's for Glissat only, but it's after another friendly fighter's move action, so it could be good. I assume you can use it within a super action, so you can bring it up to support. So that's quite nice. Extra mobility is never to be sniffed at. And Cruel Volley, specifically for Hadzu, after this fighter's range 3 attack action, make another one. So that could be really strong because you can pull people towards you. So you can actually use it twice and hopefully do a bit of damage and pull somebody towards you twice. Could be good. But again, it is only a Hadzu specific card. Okay then, let's have a little look at the Slaanesh objectives, the Dread Pageant objectives, starting with this one. Beautiful Deaths. Now this card is pretty unbelievable. It's a duel. Score this in end phase if there are 3 or more surviving friendly fighters and 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. I mean, you wouldn't have read that straight away. You'd have been drawn to the massive 6 glory at the bottom. You don't very often get 6 glory cards in Warhammer Underworlds, and well, this is an interesting one. So you've got to have 3 or more surviving friendly fighters, so basically you can just lose 1 fighter and you've got to have killed 3 or more enemy fighters. What a fascinating card combination. I can totally see this being played. Pete, I think, is more in favour of this card than me. I feel like it could be tricky with two wound fighters on your team, but you have got the defensive capabilities of Glissat, obviously, who's got 2 dodge and guard. I just think it's going to be hard, and you've kind of got to manage your warband well to score it, but it is worth 6 glory, so perhaps it's worth it. If you draw against Curse Breakers or the Wormspat, you're probably going to struggle, but if you're against the Gits or the Ghosts, then obviously you've got far more chance of scoring it early in the game, or indeed even late in the game. I mean, it's a good card, but can you keep 3 fighters alive? We'll have to see. I mean, I'm not sure I take it. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to take it, but then I never win any tournament, so don't necessarily listen to me. Now, Slaanesh is all about excess, and that is noted in the next set of objectives. There's actually more of these, but we'll just do 3 at a time. We've got Excess of Gluttony. Score this immediately after activation if 1 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to 2 or more enemy fighters. This, again, it depends on your matchup. Could be easy to score. It requires a little bit of manipulation. It is a surge, but I'm not sure I'd take this one. But it's not impossible. Excess of Carnality. Now, you'd know all about this if you'd spent any time locked in a garage with Pete, but you score this immediately, another surge after an activation if 2 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to the same enemy fighter. Excess of Indolency. Score this in end phase if there are no enemy fighters with any move or charge tokens. Not sure necessarily you can't regard that bit, but your warband holds 2 or more objectives. This is possible. I mean, I don't know how many objectives you're going to. There are 4 members in the warband. It's doable. It matches up with a couple of others. It is end phase though. Obviously it'd be a much stronger card if it was a surge card. And we have an excess of excess because we also have excess of vainglory. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action if that attack action takes an enemy fighter with 2 or more upgrades out of action. I think there is a card like this in Beastgrave, very similar, but you have got an or that friendly fighter has 3 or more upgrades, so you've definitely got a good chance of scoring that, and it's surge, but probably perhaps better late in the game. Excess of paramountcy. I actually had to look up whether paramountcy was a word, and it is. It just means the one who's most paramount. Hybrid, score this in an end phase if your leader, so that's why it's paramountcy, your leader holds an objective in enemy territory, or one or more enemy leaders holds an objective in your territory. So an interesting one that you can perhaps give a little ground. We tend to want our enemies' leaders in our territory, but we can score this. It's 1 glory for an end phase. 1 glory end phase cards. They have to be good to justify themselves in a deck. I'm not sure this one will do it. Excess of avidity. Now I know you're all watching avidly this video, so you may well have this right now, and if you do and it was the end phase and your warband held more objectives than any other warband, then you could score this. And again, this marries up quite nicely with some of the other whole objectives that already exist in the game. You could score this while on your way to try and score other things, or maybe pick it up at the same time, so that's potentially strong. I haven't really worked out whether Slaanesh make good objective grabbing warbands. I tend to feel like if you've got four or 3 members, then you're not so good at it, so it would depend on your matchup, and so whether you would play this, I'm not sure. So we've got Godseekers. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is enemy territory. Again, late in the game, pretty good. It was basically conquest, isn't it? And you might add it. I'm just not sure in the beginning of the game. It's better than conquest because it's just a single end phase and not a third end phase. But you want to be trying to keep your fighters alive at the beginning, I think, if you want to inspire them, and so you might not want to be trying to get all 4 of them into enemy territory. But it's definitely got potential. Endless Revel. There's another surge. Score this immediately after an activation if each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move or charge tokens. So again, definitely scoreable, this one. It's a surge card as well, so you can score this turn 1 if you need to. You have to move and charge everybody, but it's definitely scoreable, so an interesting option. You won't just be standing with Hadzu to shoot though, if you do carry this card. 3 left, here's 2 of them. The Cavalcade of Madness, a perfect Slaanesh entitled card. Score this in an end phase if there are 3 or more surviving friendly fighters and each surviving friendly fighter is inspired. It's 2 glory, and again it's all about whether you can manipulate the inspiration mechanic without losing more than 1 fighter. So it's scoreable, again probably scoreable towards the beginning of the game if you can work out how you're inspiring. Less good at the end. And scintillating sadism. Some might say watching our videos to the end is that. Andrew Marlowe would disagree. Score this in an end phase if each surviving fighter has 1 or more wound counters. So again, this marries up with the inspire condition, and in this case it doesn't matter if you then lose 1 because it's each surviving enemy fighter has 1 or more wound counters. So again, you're not so likely to score at the beginning, but towards the end, even with only 1 fighter, you could pick up scintillating sadism, and let's be honest, who doesn't want to do that? Finally, Grisly Tableau. It's a surge, it's 1 glory. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action that takes an enemy fighter holding an objective out of action. Well, that's kind of the bread and butter of the game, so I can see this card getting quite a lot of attention unless there's a massive swing away from objective play, which I don't really see that very likely. So I think Grisly Tableau will be seen in quite a lot of Dread Pageant decks. And that's it. That's all the cards. They're pretty tasty. They're very thematic warband. I love the excess and the gluttony and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very thematic set of cards, and quite looking forward to seeing how they play on the tabletop. I think they're going to be tricky to pilot. You've got to balance your inspire mechanism against the longevity of your warband, but I think they're going to be fascinating to play, and I think the matchup with the Lumineth in the initial games of Direchasm are going to be really interesting. So let us know what you think. Do the liking and subscribing and all that jazz, and we'll see you soon. Don't forget to check out the other videos in the Direchasm series, but most of all, whatever you're doing, stay safe and try and enjoy some Warhammer Underworlds. Bye!